Snow fell quietly across the endless Texas plains, covering the land in a soft white blanket that made everything feel unreal and distant. The wind howled across the open fields, shaking the bare trees and sending icy needles through the darkness. Jack Miller tightened his grip on the steering wheel as his old pickup truck rolled down the empty highway. Christmas Eve had never meant much to him since the accident that took his wife and son. It was just another night of cold air and lonely roads. He was thinking about the cattle when his headlights caught something unusual near a deserted bus stop. At first, he thought it was a shadow or a stray animal. But as he slowed down, he realized it was a person. A woman sat curled on the bench, her coat thin, her head bowed, her breath forming pale clouds in the freezing air. Jack pulled over, his tires crunching on the snow. He stepped out, the cold biting into his face. "Ma'am," he called, his voice almost lost in the wind. The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes were dark and tired, her face pale from the cold. She stood slowly, unsure, as if ready to run. She spoke softly, her accent heavy. I wait bus. But bus no come." Jack frowned. "This stop closed years ago. You'll freeze out here." She hugged herself, shivering. "I don't have place. Phone dead. Money, gone." Her words came out broken, but her fear was clear. She told him her name was Li Mei, that she had just arrived from China to meet a distant cousin who never showed up. She had taken the wrong bus, gotten lost, and ended up here, miles from any town. Jack hesitated. He had spent years avoiding people, keeping to his ranch and his animals. But leaving her here felt impossible. The cold was brutal, and the nearest town was far away. He remembered how helpless he had felt after losing his family, how strangers had helped him survive those first dark months. He cleared his throat. "Come home with me, if you want. It's warm there. You can rest, and we'll figure things out in the morning." Li Mei stared at him, unsure if she should trust a man she had just met on a deserted road. But the wind was getting stronger, and her hands were numb. After a moment, she nodded slowly. She climbed into the truck, clutching her bag tightly. Jack turned up the heater, and warm air filled the cab. She sighed with relief, her shoulders relaxing for the first time. They drove in silence for a while, the only sound the engine and the wind outside. Jack glanced at her. She looked exhausted, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, a strange sense that this meeting was not just an accident. As they approached the ranch, the house lights glowed softly in the darkness. The place had always felt empty to him, but tonight, it looked different. It looked like a shelter, a refuge. Jack parked and helped her out. The porch creaked under their steps as he opened the door. Warm air rushed out, carrying the faint smell of pine from the small Christmas tree he had decorated out of habit. Li Mei stepped inside, her eyes widening. She whispered, "So warm, thank you." Jack nodded, suddenly feeling shy. He didn't know that this simple act of kindness would change both their lives forever. The fire crackled softly in the small living room, sending orange light dancing across the wooden walls. Jack watched the woman sit on the old couch, her hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug. She looked fragile, like someone who had traveled too far without rest, but there was a quiet determination in her posture. "This is cocoa?" she asked, tasting it carefully. "Yeah, hot chocolate," Jack replied with a faint smile. "Figured it'd help warm you up." Li Mei nodded, her lips curving into a small smile. "In my city, we drink hot tea, but this is very good." The ranch house was simple, just a living room, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms, but it felt warmer than it ever had. Jack had lit a few candles and turned on the old radio, where soft Christmas music played. He hadn't celebrated properly in years, but tonight felt different. He went into the kitchen and started cooking, moving slowly as if he was out of practice with having someone else around. The sound of meat sizzling in the pan and potatoes boiling filled the air. Li Mei stood up and walked over, watching curiously. "I help?" she asked. "You don't have to," Jack said, but she insisted, so he handed her a knife to cut vegetables. They worked side by side in awkward silence at first, then slowly began talking. Li Mei told him about her journey. She had dreamed of seeing America since she was a child, studying English and becoming a teacher. Her parents had saved for years to send her. But when she arrived, everything felt confusing and overwhelming. Her cousin, who promised to help her, never answered her calls. She got lost, missed connections, and ended up on that lonely road. I think, maybe I was stupid, she said quietly. Jack shook his head. You were brave. Traveling that far alone takes guts. She looked surprised, then nodded thoughtfully. They sat at the small dining table and ate together. The food was simple, but Li Mei acted as if it were a feast. She thanked him again and again, bowing her head slightly, which made Jack feel embarrassed. You don't need to keep thanking me, he said. Anyone would have done the same. She looked at him seriously. Not anyone. After dinner, she walked around the living room, touching the ornaments on the small Christmas tree. Tiny lights blinked in red and gold, reflecting in her eyes. In China, she said softly, we don't celebrate Christmas like this. But I saw pictures online. It looks warm. Family together. Jack followed her gaze and felt a knot in his chest. Family. That word had become painful for him. He remembered decorating trees with his son, laughing as his wife wrapped gifts. This is just habit, he said quietly. Didn't feel like Christmas for a long time. Li Mei turned to him, her expression gentle. Tonight feels like Christmas, she said. Her words lingered in the air. Jack realized he felt something he hadn't in years, not happiness exactly, but a small, fragile sense of connection. He showed her the guest room, giving her extra blankets. She thanked him again, bowing slightly. Good night, Jack, she said slowly, practicing his name. Good night, Li Mei. As he turned off the lights and went to his own room, Jack lay awake listening to the wind outside. For the first time in many years, the house didn't feel empty. Morning light streamed through the thin curtains, painting the wooden walls in soft gold. Jack woke up earlier than usual, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the creak of the barn door swaying in the wind. For a moment, he forgot about the night before, until he heard footsteps in the hallway. Li Mei stepped into the kitchen, wearing an oversized sweater Jack had given her and holding her bag close. She looked more relaxed, her hair tied back loosely, her eyes brighter than they had been in the cold darkness. Good morning, she said carefully. Morning, Jack replied, pouring coffee. You sleep okay? Yes. Very good. Your house is peaceful. He handed her a cup of tea instead of coffee, remembering she had mentioned it. She smiled with gratitude, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. After breakfast, Jack offered to show her around the ranch. The sky was clear, and the snow sparkled under the sun. Li Mei laughed softly as she walked, leaving small footprints beside his larger ones. The horses greeted them with curious snorts. One chestnut mare stepped forward and tried to nibble Li Mei's scarf, making her gasp and burst into laughter. She is stealing my scarf. Jack chuckled, something he rarely did. That's Daisy. She thinks everything is food. They spent the morning feeding the animals. Li Mei was hesitant at first, but soon she grew confident, gently patting the horses and talking to the cows as if they understood her. Jack watched her with quiet amazement. The ranch had always been silent, but her voice filled the space with warmth. As they sat on the wooden fence, Li Mei began telling him about her hometown in China, a crowded city with tall buildings, bright lights, and busy streets. She spoke of her parents, who worked long hours, and how they dreamed of her becoming a teacher. She told him about studying English late at night and imagining what life in America would be like. I wanted to help children learn, she said softly. And see the world. Jack nodded, listening closely. Then she asked about him. He hesitated, staring out at the open fields. There used to be 3 of us here, he said quietly. My wife, my boy, and me. Car accident, 8 years ago. After that, I didn't see much point in people. Animals are easier. Li Mei looked at him, her expression full of sympathy but not pity. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. I closed myself off, he continued. Stopped celebrating anything. Stopped expecting anything. She thought for a moment, then said gently, but you stopped for me last night. Jack looked at her, surprised. You could drive past, she said. Many people would. But you didn't. He didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as kind, just tired and lonely. You are not alone anymore, Li Mei added quietly. The words were simple, but they hit him harder than he expected. He had grown used to solitude, telling himself it was safer that way. But now, sitting beside this stranger who felt strangely familiar, he realized how heavy that loneliness had been. They walked back toward the house in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. Jack felt something shifting inside him, like a door he had locked long ago was slowly opening. For Li Mei, the ranch felt like a sanctuary. For Jack, she felt like a reminder that life could still change, even when you thought it was over. Winter slowly faded into spring, and the snow on the ranch melted into soft mud and fresh green grass. Days passed, and Li Mei stayed longer than Jack had ever expected. At first, she thought she would leave after a few nights, but the world beyond the ranch felt too big and uncertain, while this quiet place felt safe. She found a small part-time job at a cafe in the nearby town. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Carter, liked her gentle manners and hardworking nature. Li Mei practiced her English with customers, sometimes mixing words, sometimes laughing at her mistakes. Every evening, she returned to the ranch with stories about the people she met and the new phrases she learned. Jack listened to her with interest. He hadn't realized how quiet his life had been until her voice filled the house. She started cooking dinners, experimenting with both American and Chinese dishes. The smell of garlic, ginger, and soy sauce mixed with the familiar scent of grilled meat and baked bread. The ranch no longer felt like a lonely shelter, it felt like a home. One evening, Li Mei taught Jack how to use chopsticks. He struggled, dropping noodles back into the bowl, and she laughed so hard she almost cried. He hadn't heard laughter in his house for years. Her laughter was light, warm, and contagious. Sometimes they sat on the porch at sunset, watching the sky turn orange and purple. Li Mei told him about festivals in China, about lanterns floating in the sky and family gatherings. Jack told her about his childhood on the ranch, riding horses with his father and learning to care for animals. One night, as they watched the sun disappear behind the hills, Jack felt nervous. His feelings had changed. He had started to care about her more than he expected, more than he thought he was capable of after all those years of grief. Li Mei, he said quietly, you don't have to stay here because you feel you owe me. She looked at him, confused. I stay because I want to. He hesitated. I'm not good with people. I don't want you to feel trapped. She thought for a moment, then said softly, I was afraid when I came to America. Afraid of being alone. You helped me when I had nothing. Here, I feel safe. Not trapped. Her honesty touched him deeply. He realized she wasn't just a guest anymore. She had become part of his daily life, part of the ranch's rhythm. Li Mei also had her fears. She had trusted people before and had been disappointed. But Jack never lied, never pretended to be something he wasn't. His quiet kindness made her feel respected, not judged. One evening, she cooked him a special meal from her hometown and explained each dish. In my family, she said, we cook together. Food means care. Jack nodded, understanding. He had forgotten how it felt to share meals, to share stories, to share silence with someone else. As weeks passed, their friendship slowly changed into something deeper, without dramatic confessions or sudden promises. It grew in small moments, shared coffee in the morning, shared laughter in the evening, shared quiet understanding in between. Two lonely people, from different worlds, were slowly building something new together, without even realizing how much their lives had already changed. The ranch was alive with lights, the soft glow of strings outlining the house and barn in warm golden hues. Snow had returned, lightly dusting the roof and trees, creating the perfect scene for Christmas Eve. Jack had spent the day decorating with extra care, hanging ornaments and wreaths, while Li Mei baked a star-shaped cake with a sweet glaze, filling the house with the scent of cinnamon and sugar. It was the first time in years that the ranch felt full of life instead of silence. Neighbors had been invited, and soon a few familiar faces arrived, bringing small gifts and holiday cheer. Children ran across the yard, leaving tiny footprints in the fresh snow, their laughter echoing across the fields. Jack watched them quietly, smiling to himself. He never thought he would see this place bustling with warmth again. Li Mei stood near the fire, arranging plates of food she had made. She glanced at Jack and smiled, a mixture of shyness and pride. Everything ready? She asked softly. Jack nodded. Looks perfect. Guests mingled, talking about the weather, the ranch, and the year's events. Li Mei helped serve food, her English much improved, and her laughter brightened every corner of the room. She even taught some of the children how to make simple origami stars, which they proudly hung on the small Christmas tree. As the evening grew darker, the snow continued to fall, thick and quiet, covering the fields in pristine white. Jack found himself standing beside Lee May on the porch, the chill in the air forgotten as he looked out over the lights reflecting on the snow. "You've made this place magical," she said, her eyes reflecting the glow of the decorations. Jack felt a lump in his throat. "I never imagined it could feel like this again," he admitted quietly. "Not without them." Lee May touched his hand gently. "You're not alone now." Jack looked at her, realizing how right she was. This little house, once so empty, was now full, not just with people, but with hope and warmth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small gift wrapped in simple paper. A delicate necklace with a tiny horseshoe charm glinted under the porch light. "It's for you," he said, his voice almost hesitant. "A reminder that this place is home. And maybe, that you are part of it now." Lee May's eyes widened, and then a soft smile curved her lips. She took the gift and held it close, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Jack. For everything. For this family." For a moment, they stood there in silence, listening to the soft music, the laughter inside, and the wind whispering through the trees. Then the first chime of midnight echoed from the distant town church. It was Christmas, and for the first time in years, both of them felt its meaning. Jack and Lee May stepped back into the warmth of the house, joining the guests. Around them, the ranch hummed with life and joy. Snow fell outside, but inside, hearts were warm. They laughed, shared stories, and celebrated together, knowing that this Christmas was more than decorations and food. It was about finding connection, trust, and love. That night, the lone rancher and the woman he had rescued realized that the greatest gift wasn't under the tree. It was the bond they had forged, the family they had created, and the promise of many more Christmases together.